Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another week of Good Guys Sports. I'm your host again today, Blake Gerke, joined by Mike Roby and Jackson Gerke, our usual cast here on Good Guys Sports. And we are deep into the midst of the NFL playoffs. We're going to be previewing Championship Sunday coming up here shortly. We got some great games, AFC title game, NFC title game, and as well some NFL coaching news that we will get to. But we're going to be starting on the show today with a recap of the college football playoff championship game that took place this past Monday. Obviously, we previewed it on last week's show, and I think a lot of us were obviously pretty high on Indiana. Some of us, to be fair, were high on Miami, and it ended up being a much closer game than a lot of people thought. Obviously, Indiana coming out victorious 27-21, capping off their historic 16-0 season in style, beating Miami in Miami. And obviously was a fantastic season, really an unprecedented season for Indiana, especially given their history with football and for their newness to this, if that's a word, to this high level of the college football playoffs and college football dominance, really. And obviously, Indiana was about a touchdown favorite in this game. And first half was a bit sluggish, wasn't it? It was 10-0 at halftime. Indiana was up. Miami was being physical as well. You saw Coach Signetti making a point of that as in his halftime little interview that he did before he left to go to the locker room. So Miami kept it tight, but the second half went a bit more as I expected with Indiana kind of asserting themselves. But got to give Miami credit for sticking in this game, making it close. Indiana out on top. Jackson, I'll start with you. Did this game go the way that you thought it did, or were you a bit surprised at how close the final score ended up being?
Oh, I was actually a bit surprised of the game being close being of how this close a margin it was. You think about it, Carson Beck had the last play of the game. It sailed at one of the Indiana playmakers and defenders in the very last game. That was like a game of inches kind of play, and that was what really a game of inches of how the game was won by Indiana. It was the timeout that Kirk Tanetti made with his adjustment, and that was really how it all was all said and done. And for and for how and for Indi and, and so now look, Indiana. I think that we can all agree that I'll get to them in a second, but Miami, that they have had a that they that they have had one of the most great runs of all time. And in the 16-0 season, I think we all remember that Joe Burrow and that LSU team once had a perfect season before in college football. But if but if how the game ended on this interception
Yeah.
of how it of how the game was
So
played.
you were impressed with
Yeah,
Miami.
I was
Is that what
very
you're trying to
impressed with.
say?
Well, I was very impressed with how close Miami was. Because think about it, they were think about it, they were so close of what would be a game-winning touchdown to the end of the game. Only it was intercepted by Jamar Sharp. The Indiana defensive back on the end made a big play to end the game to seal it for Indiana's first championship in school history, thanks in large part, and who by the way, that he was that a Miami kid who actually played in his home stadium, much like Fernando Mendoza is, but if you looked at what Indiana did, I mean, look, the Miami Hurricanes did all they could. They had a great season, and it was just that Indiana was a better team in the end, and they made and they made more big plays on fourth down with Kurt Cinetti rolling the dice on the gutsy play call that he did. whenever Mendoza in those big plays in the big moments whenever he needs it the most. I just think that Miami played a perfect game. They kept it close. It was just that Indiana was just they were just a better team. They had a block punt in the first half, and that was where all and that was one of the areas that Miami didn't do well as a team on special teams defensively. But Indiana just had the advantage there, and that was where the game was won with the Indiana Hoosiers, that they finally won their first championship in school history. And I think that we can prove one of our co-hosts wrong, that from Indiana being a basketball school, that they can now be officially, that is just only the beginning, and they're just getting started, a football school, that we can officially say that they are the football school in the Hoosier State. And Kurt Cinetti and Bernardo Mendoza and and by far the Heisman Trophy winner and player, and now winning national championship, has checked off his he's checked off that his list, and he won the Big Ten, and he won Omar Omar and those guys, and just really did a great job overall. But and also a fun fact that Indiana, that the Big Ten has won its third consecutive national championship. Ohio State did it last year, and Michigan the year before that, and that just shows you that the Big Ten, of where things headed in the world of college football, is really looking to be, I think, the best conference in all of college football. And the SEC is third year in a row is having a down year, and they're taking a step back. And the ACC, look, we can all agree they're not a great football conference. They're a basketball conference, and I think that what it says for what it says for the and for what it says for the Indiana Hoosiers, from what they have accomplished, that nobody in college football has ever seen. That the last team to do so. That's one of the perfect 16-0 season. You have to go way back in time to um, to Yale, which was the first team that did it back in 1894. That none of us were even born and alive and around back then. That was the last time we've seen a perfect 16-0 season for college basketball, if you can believe it. And
Football.
well, yeah, and yeah, yeah, in college football. But another fun fact back then, the last time we had that kind of season in college football, that there was no color TV. It was all black and white back then.
Yeah,
And
why are
that
they
was
even
really
playing
different.
six? Why'd they
And they
play
didn't
16?
even play. And you want to and you want to know another fun fact? They
Please.
didn't play helmets back then, and that's and I find that interesting. But yeah,
Yeah, why'd they even
some but
play? Why'd they even play that many games back
I don't
then?
know. I think that college football
It just kept finding
was just
people
getting
for them to
started in its
beat.
early days, and that's probably
I mean, to be fair,
why that could be. So
one
yeah,
of their two of their victories were against the Orange Athletic Club, the Boston Athletic Association, and the Chicago Athletic Association. I'm looking at their it's 1894 Yale Bulldogs, so I'm not sure those ball clubs would stand much of a chance in the modern game, Mike, to be fair. But credit where credit's due. 16-0 is no mean feat, is it? Mike, what did you make of this game and the exclamation point that Indiana put on their season
Yeah.
on Monday night?
Wow. What a second half. And you got to give credit to Miami for cutting the lead to three times. I mean, it was a dogfight. Uh, I think some of the keys to that game were um, the 4th and 5 play where Mendoza hit Becker for 19 yards to take it down to the 17. And then the 4th and 4 where Mendoza threw his touchdown pass. Um, I think that was, Jack had already mentioned the block punt. Uh, that was just I was listening to radio coming home the other day, and they were mentioning that Indiana has not lost a fumble since the first half of the first game this season.
Wow.
That's an incredible stat.
Crazy.
And I think, you know, the Indiana defense, the one stat that jumped out at me was Miami was 3 for 11 in third down conversions. And the fact that they had about as perfect, Indiana had about as perfect game as you could play, and Miami had just a few hiccups. And that was the ball game. So if I were a Raider fan, I'd be very, very excited for
Oh,
this
absolutely.
coming season.
Absolutely. You got to give credit to Mendoza. I think we should mention as well that unbelievable touchdown run that he had in the fourth quarter, right? Where he was
Hmm.
just people were just bouncing off of him. And I think that's one thing with Mendoza as well is that he doesn't obviously if you've seen him interviewed, he comes off he's a bit of like interesting sort of like corny personality and whatnot. So like you might mistake that for him being sort of like a small pocket passer, but he's a very big lad, isn't he? He's about think he's 6'5" to 230, something like that. And you can see that when he runs as well. Like I think he took some big shots maybe early in his career, and he's kind of learned to adapt to that. So he's very effective
Hmm.
running the football, and he's not an easy person to bring down or chase down.
Yeah.
And that obviously play was indicative of that touchdown run there.
Yeah. Indeed. A great, great way to end the college season.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Jackson, where do you think this Indiana? Obviously, you mentioned that LSU team from 2019. I think they finished undefeated 15 and 0. I think Michigan as well was undefeated champion under Jim Harbaugh a couple of seasons ago. Obviously, you mentioned the Big Ten dominance that we've seen the past couple of seasons. So, where does this Indiana team rank amongst maybe we'll say champions in the CFP era? So you don't have to compare them all the way back to 1894, though I know you're a bit of an amateur historian yourself. But in terms of like recent CFP champions, where would this Indiana team stack up to it? Because on paper, 16 and 0 victories against Alabama, Oregon, Miami in Miami to win a national championship. Not many teams have that kind of resume, do they?
No, they don't. This group is at the very top, and they're a very special group of guys. And the way that Kurt Cinetti has took this job, think about it. A few years ago, he had a pep rally speech um, at the Indiana Hoosiers Allen Fieldhouse basketball arena, and he made a speech to the students of how it was just the beginning and how they were just getting things started, and he was just and Indiana was just about getting started. They just made their hire to Cincinnati as their head coach, and he made his first appearance after being hired by Indiana head coach by Kurt making the additional um, head coach press conference right when he was hired, and once he was introduced as the Indiana head coach a few years ago. And one of the things that stood out to me is when asked by a reporter that he said in that he replied, and he said, "Google me," and that was one of the things that I was really struck by of how Kurt Cincinnati has really built this kind of program. He comes from Pitt. He comes from a blue collar Pittsburgh and West Virginia. He's learned from Nick Saban in the coaching tree.
He used to coach Alabama,
He
didn't he? Yeah.
he did, and he also Uncle Mike might also like this, but he also came from James Madison, and he brought one of his associate head coaches with him, and that's one of the things that I'm
Well, you
very
know, he was before
struck by
before that he was just down the road here
by Cincinnati.
just before that he's over at Elon for just a year before he's at James Madison, if you can believe that, just
Well,
down the
that's
road
crazy. That's
from you
crazy.
over there in Durham, Jack. So
Sounds
yeah,
like sounds like he's made a lot of coaching stops during his tenure of his coaching career. But yeah, Chris Cincinnati, one of the most highest paid coaches of all time. Be, who behind him was Nick Saban, who's now retired and now a college game day analyst. And I think Kirsten is right up there with him, and I think that and I think that the Big Ten with him and Ryan Day is going to be, I think, the newest rival in college football next season, and then and then looking ahead to national title odds for those who are betting people out there that they are the co-favorites with Ohio State, Texas, Notre Dame, and Georgia in the mix are also one of those teams that are favored in there. So it tells me that Indiana is not going anywhere. They're here to stay, and Kurt Zanny has signed a contract extension with the team, and he's gonna recruit players in the transfer portal. He has his quarterback from TCU filming in for to take Mendoza's place. So I would expect a lot of excitement for the fans out there in Bloomington as they're about to have a parade on Saturday. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of vibe and excitement, buzz and excitement out there for Bloomington for those who are a IU fan up in Bloomington for those who for the Indiana Garden Red. But yeah, fans should be very excited about. But I think Indiana from what they've accomplished in the 16-0, it's very rare. I don't think I ever see a college football team ever have have this accomplished before. Aside being from the perfect season in the pressure level of the Don Shula and the Dolphins, but in the college level, that it's happened before. That believe it or not, it's happened before in the 75-76 Indiana Hoosiers team where they had the perfect season in college basketball version before. So it's happened before in the college basketball version, but never before. But and now another thing that I like to add that I want to point out before we move on is that before Kurt Zanetti, Indiana was a rebuilding team. They were not good. They had the most losses combined ever in school history. But before Kurt Zanetti took the job, and that was where you had away teams pack the stadium, and they were like a bunch of fans from opposing teams that would show up, and that was where things just felt different than they are now. So what I would say it was so what I say to that is going to be the most complete turnaround programs in school history and in team history, and for what they've accomplished, it was very special, and it will be there for years to come. And for years it's been a basketball state, but I think we can put that aside and just say that Indiana is a great program to go for transfers and for high school recruits and for the celebrity support that Mark Cuban and all those celebrity guys who got support by Chris Zanetti. I think that Indiana is a great place to go if you're a high school student and for an athlete. After what Chris Zanetti done on Monday night for this team is really astonishing to me, and I think to me that Indiana is here to stay, and it's only the beginning. And I think Kurt Zanetti and the Indiana Hoosiers are just on a roll, and they are just getting started. Like I said, they're just getting started, and I think the Indiana Hoosiers it is a great place to go for stuff on the field for academics and for their athletes in the football program. And I think if you're Hoosier fans, you got to be very excited for what this team has to come for the many years to come for a brighter future ahead.
Absolutely, absolutely. Mike, what do you made of Kurt Cignetti and his rise? Obviously, he's seemed like he's been the big him and Mendoza, obviously, of course, but I mean, you can't help but be impressed by the way that Cignetti has turned around. We saw the same thing with James Madison. He gets in there, he gets the players to buy in, gets his players in, turns the program around, and he did that at Indiana. But I don't think many people thought he'd be able to do that to this level, getting them to an undefeated national championship. I mean, it's one of the most impressive turnarounds you have to say in college sports history, right?
Yeah, whatever he's doing it right. And if, he may be the new model for the modern coach in the college game, especially with the transfer portal. He certainly knows how to work the transfer portal, and that's going to be the key to sustaining a program is not only recruiting out of high school but recruiting from the transfer portal. He seems to know has a knack for that. So you know uh, he's going to have a long career as long as he doesn't jump to the Raiders.
I think if I was Coach Signetti, I would stay at Indiana for as long as possible, given the resources and the teams they have there. But yeah, I mean, we should mention as well, Mike mentioned it, Mendoza looks like he's going to be number one
Yep.
overall pick to the
Yeah,
Raiders.
Mendoza was on the Today Show this morning,
I saw
and
that, yeah.
he announced that he's eligible for and he's going into the NFL draft. And I mean, chances are he's the number one overall pick. And
Yes,
Yeah, yeah,
so
definitely.
I missed that, but I'll have to catch up and listen to it whenever I can.
Yeah, no, he's obviously the belle of the ball. I think there really isn't too much competition in this draft in terms of like other quarterbacks maybe that you would be looking at. So Mendoza looks like he's going to be off to Las Vegas. So it'd be an interesting fit for sure to see who they obviously have a vacant head coaching position still in Las Vegas, don't they? As we
mhm.
move on to a little bit of NFL coaching news there. So it'll be interesting to see who ends up taking the reins there and leading Mendoza for his first year in the NFL. But elsewhere in NFL coaching vacancies, fellows, we have been quite a bit of news and notes in terms of players that have, or excuse me, coaches that have moved on, coaches that are interviewing. Obviously, the big sort of, I guess, I don't believe we mentioned it on the show last week was uh, head coach of the Buffalo Bills, Doug McDermott, losing his job. Of course, after that disappointing playoff loss in Denver last weekend, a lot of people were surprised by that, given maybe you would say some of the struggles that Buffalo have had. Hard to pin that on him. Is it his fault? Is it maybe the player personnel, drafting, free agents not getting the right weapons around Josh Allen? I mean, you can take your pick in terms of where you think Buffalo has gone wrong if they have. Obviously, not capitalizing and making it to a Super Bowl currently with this Josh Allen era. But Mike, did you think it was a bit harsh, McDermott letting go, or is it a case of guys been there so long, it's time for a bit of a fresh energy in the building?
Yeah, I mean, not being real close to the Bills, I thought it was a little bit harsh. It kind of reminded me of when the Nationals got rid of Dusty Baker because he couldn't go further in the playoffs. And I'm like, Really?" So, I mean, would they have kept him if they made that field goal?
Probably.
I mean, really? So, you know, uh, but I can understand it. Just frustration from the Bills Mafia and their whole fan base to have a change, but that might come. You got to be careful what you wish for because you might get it.
Jack, what'd you make of the McDermott firing?
Oh, I thought it was. Oh, I'm surprised. I just thought he was. I just thought he was just. I just thought that the ownership there was just going to keep him on the job until it was really a mistake, and to let him go, it was just his post game just was a little bit frustrated and just a little bit too harsh, in my opinion, from what I've been hearing, and to let him go, I feel like is the wrong decision, and they let the fan base down in Bills Mafia, and it really just made a lot of shock waves, and just really, it really just let he really just let Josh Allen down and the ownership there. There was just a lot of. I mean, Buffalo just didn't have the pieces that they were looking for. That they were hoping for this past season. It was really it was really the issue for me and their problem.
Well, so
And that was
isn't
and
it what you're describing then not really McDermott's fault, but possibly the general manager who did not only not get fired, but he got promoted to the president as well, Brandon Beane. So maybe is it a bit, I mean, this kind of comes back to the concept of, well, we can't fire Josh Allen, so we have to fire the coach, right? But then the GM is the one who drafts the players, drafted Keon Coleman, the receiver, who didn't really make much of an impact. So, I mean, I think I agree with the sentiment that you guys are saying that it's harsh to fire the coach when in reality he's just trying to get the best out of the pieces that a general manager has given you, right? So from that aspect, you could consider it harsh. At the same time, though, I do think, and I saw a stat as well that I don't know the exact numbers, but a large portion of coaches that win Super Bowls, it's within their first 3 seasons with a new franchise. So it's very rare that it's not impossible, but the data would tell you that if you're going to win a Super Bowl, most likely it's with a coach, not necessarily a first time head coach or anything like that, but a coach that is in his first couple of years with that franchise. So there is a thing to be said in the modern NFL about a coach being there a long time. Overstaying his welcome might be a harsh way of putting it, but for a bit of fresh blood. So that's why I think it's no accident that we're seeing the likes of McDermott, Harbaugh, Mike Tomlin moving on from these long tenures at franchise because they're seeing the likes of Mike McDonald, Sean Payton moving to a new franchise in Denver, and same thing with Mike Vrabel as well, injecting that bit of fresh life into that team. So I think that's what Buffalo is thinking with this transaction. Doesn't mean it's not harsh on McDermott though, right? Elsewhere in the NFL, news, head coaching vacancies. I think we saw Baltimore landed on their new head coach, the defensive coordinator from the LA Chargers, Jesse Minter, has taken over the reins from John Harbaugh, who himself obviously is now in line to be the New York Football Giants head coach. Still some big jobs out there. Obviously, Buffalo is going to be a big opportunity, given they have the pieces, Josh Allen and whatnot. Pittsburgh's still looking for their head coach, obviously. So still some pretty big jobs out there,
Yeah.
Jackson. What do you made of the NFL jobs that are still open and some of these coaches that have been hired as well so far? Obviously, you got some big names still out there, like Mike McDaniel's interviewing for jobs. Gosh, I even saw Philip Rivers was going to be interviewing for the Buffalo Bills job. I mean, gosh, this guy Philip Rivers just can't help himself getting a job in the NFL. Come back for the Colts, and now he's trying to be a coach. But what do you make this coaching carousel so far, Jack?
yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, it's pretty crazy that Philip Rivers, because he's lives with a great family, has all these kids. I don't think I don't think
He
he should
needs
be
the money.
coach.
He
Well,
needs school lunch money.
he should be a stay-at-home father and hang out with his kids and live in this $1 billion mansion house out there on the West Coast with his family, or no matter
Nah,
where
he
he's
wants he
living.
wants to go to Buffalo.
Well, I don't know about that, but here's what I do know about where the head coaching man vacancy stand. I think the one that nobody's talking about, and I'm very surprised with is how about Robert Saleh goes from the 49ers previously with the Jets to the Tennessee Titans.
I like that hire. Yeah, that's a good
Because
hire, I think.
and here's why I think it's a great hire. He can help with Cam Ward, who's been, I would say, just a rebuild year up there in Nashville, for that organization, the Titans. It was just a it was just a rebuild. It was a running process for Cam Ward. But if you bring Robert Saleh to the team, for the Titans for this hire, after what I've seen, from his track record, then I think then I think that's a and then I think it then I think the fans in Tennessee are going to really like what they're seeing for Robert Saleh and for this organization. And also John Harbaugh to the Giants. I've seen clips of his press conference up there in in up in East Rutherford during the training facility for his annual press conference. I do think that John Harbaugh, and now that he's been with the Ravens organization for Baltimore for like 18 or 19 years or so, I think I think for me it's a great hire, and the reason why I say that is because that if you add Ben Scadaboo and Malik Neighbors and Jackson Dart, if they were and now look, the Giants have fired all their last previous head coaches in large part because of their schedule being not so soft and very tough down the stretch, and that was really that could probably play a factor and be a part of it. But I think, but I think for but I think for me with this hire for Harbaugh is really a great thing. I mean, Dexter Lawrence and Scadaboo and Malik Neighbors and Dexter Lawrence, those guys. If I mean, if you get them healthy and show up in training camp and just and do things the hard way, and I think the organization and the people up in New York and the organization are going to really like what they're seeing for this head coach because he's a Hall of Famer. He's won a Super Bowl with the Ravens and he's done it with Ray Lewis. I expect in the offseason in the draft and get out free agents that the Giants, if you're New York, then I think other than Seattle and Houston, of course, having a great defense, but if you get the right pieces in place and if you get all the right things, if it all goes as well, things in place, and if it all goes as well, and you get all the right pieces in place, and you change the culture and do all that stuff, and I think the fans up in New York are going to really like what they're seeing.
I agree. I think it's a good hire, and I think it's going to be interesting. Harbaugh was really the big chess piece that fell. It seems like he was the most of the established guys that were let go of their positions. He was the most ready to be like, bam, I'm back in. Like, where do I go? Kind of interesting that he jumped on the Giants job. Maybe you could argue he should have waited and possibly would have been a good fit in Buffalo, but maybe the Giants deal was already like going to happen
Well,
anyways.
$20 million
Well,
speaks a lot.
it's exactly, Mike. And I think the Giants were obviously smitten with John Harbaugh, shall I say. They really wanted him. The owners really wanted him. So that it seemed like they wet his whistle for sure. But any of these hirings or openings that still have caught your eye here, Mike, as we still have quite a few
Yeah.
dominoes to fall, don't we?
Yeah. Interesting tidbit. Eric Bieniemy is returning to the Chiefs as their offensive coordinator.
I saw that, yeah.
Um, but I have to ask, knowing that Zach Robinson, the ex-Falcon offensive coordinator, is now with the Buccaneers, and then the Falcons hired the Browns ex-coach as their new head coach, as well as
Kevin Stefanski.
yeah, and Tommy Rees, ex-Browns offensive coordinator.
That's right. Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't I don't think of the Browns as being uh, uh, a top offensive team, but as Falcon fans, what do you think of that?
It's a good question, Mike. And I will say, at first thought, you're thinking a fired Browns coach, like that's not exactly the most ideal resume for the guy that you want to pin your franchise on. But what I will say about Kevin Stefanski is he's a two-time NFL Coach of the Year with Cleveland, which in of itself I think is impressive given the Cleveland Browns track record. If you're able to win NFL Coach of the Year twice, given what you're saddled with as a Cleveland Browns coach, I do think that's impressive. I think he was I like Kevin Stefanski. I think he's a good hire actually, but
Mhm.
I I don't think it's a necessarily like this is automatically going to work. Like this is a slam dunk. Obviously, no hire is right, but I think what he was able to do with the resources that he had. Obviously, there's a lot of hiccups out there in Cleveland. The whole Deshaun Watson debacle, obviously with Shador Sanders this year, a bit of a media circus there. Injuries, et cetera, et cetera. I wouldn't even want to count how many different starting quarterbacks they had to deal with. I mean, there was that season that him and the Joe Flacco led Browns made it to the playoffs, right? So, um, I think if given the right resources, and it does seem like the Falcons are all in on Stefanski and his vision. Obviously, I might have mentioned it before, but Arthur Blank basically cleaned house and brought in Matt Ryan, who obviously growing up in Atlanta, he was kind of the cornerstone of the Falcons franchise while we were living there as fans. And he's the new president, and he obviously had a big say in the coach and then the GM. I don't actually know if they settled on a GM yet, but so obviously Matt Ryan had a say in bringing Stefanski in. He's a big offensive quarterbacks guy as well, Stefanski. So it looks like because of the injuries, Penix probably might be a bit of a busted flush at this point. So it looks like Cousins will be the starter to start next year as well. But I personally like the hire, and I think Stefanski. It's a case of he was kind of playing with rocks in Cleveland. Now let's give him some tools and see what he can build in Atlanta. Jackson, what did you make of the Stefanski hire?
Um, I mean, I like it in some ways, but not all of it that we can agree on. I think that what he was in Cleveland for a long time as their head coach or prior to that, and the Stefanski Stefanski really to me was, I wouldn't call him a head scratcher, but he's really I would say a decent hire, but not a great one
So you're kind of
in
like
a lot of ways.
So you're kind of like wait and see mode. Like you think it could be good, could be not so good. You're kind of lukewarm on it. It sounds like.
Well, I'm not. I wouldn't say that. I would just say I'm average. I
Oh,
mean, think about it. If Drake won and
they got weapons there. Let's not forget
they do. They do. They got Drake one.
Bijan
Yes,
Robinson.
Bijan Robinson and Kyle Pitts and those guys. I
I
mean,
think Pitts might be a free agent, but we'll see if they bring him back. But I
but
mean,
I
he kind
say
of
Bijan Robinson and Drake. They are like scoring machines, and
Hey, Kirk
they are
Cousins
about.
is no slouch as well. Like I
Well,
like Kirk
no,
Cousins, man.
no. The Falcons do have some explosives, and they do have weapons on that team. So I will give you that. But Stefanski, it's a decent hire, but I'm not sure if I'm all in the Falcons. But now they could win the NFC South if they all stay healthy. But I'm not. But I wouldn't go that far. But
It's a winnable division. It's not like he's joining the NFC West, right? As we saw this past season
no.
with the Panthers, it's a winnable division. I think if Stefanski can tighten up the ship and get them uh, moving as a unit a bit slicker, I don't see any reason why they can't win the NFC South next year. Sorry to Bill Limberger's Panthers, but they were probably one of the worst division winners we've seen in quite some time. Let's call a spade here. So it
You're not
makes
wrong.
sense.
You're not wrong.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So it makes sense that they would want to clean house and bring in and capitalize. They spent draft equity on Drake London. They spent draft equity on Bijan Robinson. They foolishly spent draft equity on defensive players, who they don't have a first round pick this year, which is a whole nother situation. Who's going to the Rams, a team who's playing this weekend. So that's a whole nother, probably why their GM Fountaino lost his job because of some of these boneheaded moves they made in the draft. But they have the weapons there, so Stefanski has pieces to play with. So I like the hire, but it's not a slam dunk. It's like Jackson and Mike said, it's a wait and see for me.
Yeah, and another fun fact you should know about Kevin Stefanski is that he was born in in Philly, like my dad was. So I think there's a lot to like there. But you're right. But another head scratcher for me in this head scratching fire is Jeff Haley from the Dolphins. He was previously the defensive coach for the Green Bay Packers under Jordan Love in Matt LaFleur's staff. But that one's a head scratcher. That one's a head scratcher to me because because that team is going through a quarterback controversy, and there's a little bit of uncertainty for Quinn Ewers and Tua Tagovailoa. There's a lot of drama down there, and that's one I'm not really in favor of after what I've seen after the reports that I've been seeing down there in South Florida.
It's not an easy job for sure that he's taking over there. Obviously Jeff Hafley coming off of being the DC 1 year at DC in Green Bay, he's gonna have it's gonna be a bit of a rebuilding job there. I think it's safe to say in Miami. So
Guys, I got breaking news.
what do you got?
I don't know if you guys are aware, but Las Vegas has not hired a head coach yet.
Yeah.
Jackson broke this news months ago. Kurt Signetti has signed I think it's a 10 or 11-year contract worth an average of $11.5 million a year. However, Jackson, not so fast. There is a clause in his contract. If he were to win, he signed this in October. If he were to win the national championship, but he is not one of the average highest three paid coaches for his resume, he has a clause. He does not have to pay the $15 million exit if he's not in the top three highest paid, which leaves a road for him to leave Jackson and go be the head coach at the Las Vegas Raiders with his quarterback, Mendoza. You heard it first here, guys. There is a clause. There's a chance.
There's a chance.
Wow.
There's a chance.
Wow. That is pretty crazy, bold statement stuff from Blake Lumberger right there.
But I just
giving
think
us a little shout out to there.
Indiana is this might be the most, if you were in a time machine and you fast forwarded 10 years, 20 years, and you heard the statement, the Indiana football job right now is more desirable than being the head coach of the Raiders in the NFL. It's a crazy thing to say, but
It's crazy.
it's
Yep.
true, right? And especially
Yep.
nowadays with the
Mhm.
money flying around in the Big Ten and the SEC, more specifically in college football. It's just the Big Ten and the SEC for all, the bigger teams in those conferences for all purposes, they're basically NFL franchises at this point, right, Mike? So like you're making money, you're buying the best play, you're bringing the best players in. It's basically like being the head coach of a really good NFL team, but you're just in the Big Ten, right? So I personally don't think it's Signetti. He'd think it'd be crazy to leave for Vegas.
Yeah, but I don't know.
It'd be fun if it happened.
It'd be fun. I mean, he seems to, his career trajectory keeps growing, keeps rising and rising. I wouldn't be surprised, but time will tell.
Well, the one thing, there's an article about Kirk Cinetti that he gets a bowl from Chipotle every day for lunch. And he just has like chicken, rice, beans, and the side of guac on it. So um, he can get that in Vegas too, to be fair. But
Sounds like Mike might have just called the first coach ever to win the Natty in college and the Lombardi Trophy in back-to-back years. Is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Mike saying.
well, if he takes the Raiders job and leads them to Super Bowl, then he really is.
He really is.
I think that's some divine intervention there.
Just the
Yeah.
playoffs. Just the playoffs.
Just-
Go,
yeah,
go,
honestly.
go ahead and put $5 on that bet.
That'd
That's
be
right.
a heck of a future, that's for sure. That's for sure. All right. Well, as we're sticking with the NFL here, we do have to preview the big games this weekend, fellas. NFC Championship game, AFC Championship game, both taking place this Sunday. Let's start on the AFC side. Obviously, 3 o'clock on Sunday, we have the top seed Denver Broncos taking on the New England Patriots. The Patriots coming off pretty comprehensive victory in Foxborough, you have to say, against a turnover-prone CJ Stroud and the Houston Texans. 28-16, I think, honestly flatters the Texans in terms of a scoreline. They were never really in that game. CJ Stroud was turning the ball over like his life depended on it. Tough conditions, obviously, but it was a poor game from him. Texans defense actually, I think, played a decent game against that New England offense, but the Patriots look to be a pretty complete team, coming up against a number one seed Broncos, who, of course, the big storyline for this game is a dramatic overtime victory against the Buffalo Bills in Denver. But of course, the big story is Bo Nix is had an ankle injury and is out for the rest of this postseason. So it'll not be Bo Nix squaring off against Drake May Jackson. It will be Jared Stidham squaring off in Denver against Drake May. So Jackson, let me ask you this: does the fact that Jarrett Stidham is starting for the Broncos make this a easy pick for you with New England, or are people being a bit too quick to write off Denver, a Bo Nix less Denver Broncos here?
A little bit of both, actually. Jarrett Stidham has not played a single snap since the 2023 season, if you can believe it, and he has zero postseason experience. But anything that I've been hearing out of the press conferences from Sean Payton, that he is not afraid of the big moment, and he can still find a way to win a game. So the Patriots, the way I look at it, the Patriots are 8-0 on the road. They have a great scoring. They have a great defense for scoring. That is. But at the same time, Denver, Mile High has not been very kind for the Patriots since Tom Brady was their quarterback. And the reason why I say that is because you have to go out the altitude. You have to deal with those elements, and that's just one of the few factors I look at, and that's where at the same time where Stidham just has zero experience in the postseason, yet he will be facing his former team as he played for the Patriots during a few seasons when Jamar Mayo was their offensive coordinator at that time, where he's now let go and fired, and they'll be a clean house since then. But wait for the Raiders after that, but he has had zero snaps this season as a Broncos QB. This is his moment. This is his time, and I think if Jarrett Stidham does all the right things right, and if you come out to a hot start, then I think the Patriots are just going to have to be aware, because if Jarrett Stidham uses his legs and just does all the right things right, then I think the Broncos have a chance. But
Jackson, are you kidding me? You gotta be kidding me. Are you being serious?
I'm not.
I like your altitude right now.
I'm just saying, Blake, that the Patriots have a better quarterback and a better defense, but I'm telling you, Blake, that I'm not counting out Jarrett Stidham, because especially when he had a great college career at Auburn during his time in college, and I will tell you that Jarrett Stidham, even when his team is trailing by at least a few scores or whenever at halftime, he's never out of it, and I'm telling you, Blake, that Jarrett Stidham and listening to Sean Payton's press conference, and he's saying, "Watch out," and he can find ways to get it done whenever the game's on the line. So we've heard a lot about. We'll find a way to get.
So you mentioned Sean Payton. You mentioned his press conferences. Does this mean that you're picking the Broncos, or are you picking New England? Come on, let's get down to brass tacks here, Jackson.
I don't know. This is going to be tough.
What do you mean you don't know? I'm asking you for a pick. That's not an answer. I don't know.
Well, New England is a 4.5 favorite, so I'm going to go slight edge Patriots, but the Broncos are going to keep things close and they're going to cover. But if I get it wrong, who cares? The Broncos are still unbeatable Mile High. That's how I view this game.
Jackson, let me tell you. Let me tell you about that Blake's tired of hearing this name, but I'm going to tell you the one team that Sean Payton is more angry about than anybody else, and that's the Indianapolis Colts. And I'm going to tell you why, Jackson. They can no longer use practice players in these situations. If you're on a practice squad, they can't pick them up. They used to be able to do that. They can't do that anymore. So there was one person that every coach had on speed dial if this happened in the playoffs. You know who that was?
Who's that?
Phillip Rivers. So when the Colts signed Phillip Rivers mid-season, it messed up every coach's playbook for this exact situation. He's no longer eligible to come in this late in the season because he was signed to a team. Phillip Rivers would have been starting for the Denver Broncos on the road to the Super Bowl had the Colts not signed him mid-season. There you go.
Well, you do make a very great point there, and that's definitely a topic that all of us in sports talk definitely had our eye on for the most part.
Blake, who do you like in this one, man? All that being said,
Man, it's a no-brainer. I feel bad, man. I feel bad for Denver. Jackson has a good altitude about this, a very good altitude about this. I like where his heart is, but Jackson, you're right. The Patriots win, and they win handily. It's just the defense, like Jackson said, and they got a great quarterback. Now he's got a couple of playoff games under his belt. He's probably got the butterflies going. Yeah, Patriots win handily.
Mike, what do you think?
This is a tough one. If Bo Nix was playing Broncos, but he's not,
He is not.
you know, the Patriots have an Achilles heel. It's called their offensive line. They haven't been playing very well. Last week, May got sacked 5 times, fumbled 4, lost 2 of them. And Broncos has got probably as good a defense or fairly close defense to the Texans. So it's gonna be tough. Um, the Pats defense is awesome. But the Broncos offensive line is one of the elite units in the league. The key is going to be if the Broncos can run the ball against the Patriots. You know, Patriots only gave up 87 yards rushing to the Chargers, who had a decimated offensive line, and the Texans only rushed for 48 yards. But that's going to be a key to this. A key matchup to look out is the left tackle, Will Campbell, is going to go against the edge rusher for the Broncos, Nick Bonito, who had 14 sacks this year. So it's going to be a tough game. I think the key is going to be um, Stidham is not going to be as sharp as Nix, is not going to be able to run all the disguise routes that Nix was running against the Bills. He's going to. I expect a lot of screen passes and
Yeah.
things like that nature. And so I think the Broncos are going to beat the spread. Pats win by 3.
Ooh, okay, okay. So I've heard some tight wins for the Pats here. It sounds like it's the consensus.
Mike been watching vintage Marshall Thundering Herd Byron Leftwich footage? Did he say there's a chance Bo Nix won't play? He must have been watching some vintage Thundering Herd Marshall football tapes when Byron Leftwich broke his leg and said, "I'm not coming out." And they put
Yeah.
shoulders and brought him to the line of scrimmage, and like Mr. Miyagi threw the football off of one foot.
No, I'm sure they wish that they could revitalize Bo Nix for this one, but it looks like it is going to be Stidham. But gosh, so we got 3 for the Patriots, and oh man, I just don't know where to say. Hey, wait a minute, not so fast, fellas. Hang on a second here.
Come on.
Not so fast. All I'm hearing this week is about Drake May this, Mike Vrabel that, the Patriots, they're back. Oh, the Broncos, they don't have their starting quarterback. They're done. I think we're overlooking some pretty obvious key facts here. I'll be brief, but the Broncos, with the reason the Broncos are the number 1 seed is not because of Bo Nix. Now, that's not to say that Bo Nix is not a competent quarterback, and that's not to say that Bo Nix didn't make some great plays in that Buffalo game, because he did. He made some great throws. But the reason Denver is the number 1 seed is because of their defense and how dominant that has been. Their defense is still intact. Denver's number 1 seed. They're playing at home in a rowdy, mile high stadium there. The fans are going to be after it. And we have not seen Drake May and this Patriots team go on the road in a big playoff game and get it done. They won against a depleted Chargers team at home. They won against a sputtering Texans offense, CJ Stroud team at home. We have not seen Drake May and Mike Vrabel get the job done in a tough environment. I don't care if it's Bo Nix, Jared Stidham, Bart Starr, Joe Montana. I don't care who's behind quarterback. This is going to be a tough place to go and get a result. So I think the national media is really sleeping on the Denver Broncos here. Give me the Broncos by a field goal, fellas. How about that?
I would not surprise me.
Okay, there you have it. There you
Would
have
not
it.
surprise me.
I've made
I
the case.
yeah.
Let's see,
It
Jackson.
Yeah, well, you make a great point, Blake, because I don't know if you saw in the Broncos last game where where Buffalo had made one of those big plays on third down. It was in their last game where he thought he caught the ball, except there was a Broncos player that was right there with him, neck to neck, defending him, and that was where he stole the ball from him, and that was where
Sure.
the game took a turn.
Well,
So
you know
you
what?
make so you do make
Strange things happen at Mile High, Jack.
you make a great point, Blake. You make a great point, and I think if to your point, if the Broncos keep doing that, the Patriots, then I think they have a chance. So I think you do make a great point on that, Blake. But you're right. This is why they call it
you've already made your pick
any
though, so
given.
you can't change your mind.
Well,
It's too
no, I'm
late.
not. But I know I'm not. But
No,
all
I'm
I'm
kidding.
saying
I'm
with
kidding.
you is Blake is it's any
Yeah.
given Sunday and
That's what they
any
say.
given play. That's just the NFL playoffs for you.
That's what they say, man.
Where all things matter.
Hey,
That's all I'm saying.
speaking of any given Sunday, with this crazy winter storm? Will it be passed through there by the time this game's played? Will that have any impact on this game?
I think
That's a great question.
The fact
Won't have
that
any impact on Denver or Seattle.
nah, we'll be okay because
Wow.
both games will be West Coast, Denver and Seattle. We should transition to that. Thanks, Mike, for Seattle. We've waited till the end. Obviously, I have my Zoom. I am currently in Seattle, as you can tell by my Zoom background. I got the mountain on my right shoulder, left shoulder, and the Space Needle right behind me. Jackson's repping the Seahawks as well. This is the night game or late afternoon, early evening game. The Seattle Seahawks, number one seed, hosting the Los Angeles Rams. They themselves a 5 seed, coming off of a thrilling victory in Chicago. The Rams were against the cardiac Caleb and the Chicago Bears. The Seahawks themselves coming off of a dominant victory against the 49ers again after beating them handily in San Francisco the last week of the regular season. This game is going to be really interesting, fellas. Seahawks are slight favorites. They are missing Charbonnet, but everyone else is fairly healthy on the Seattle side. The Rams look like they're pretty healthy as well for the most part. Most of the players that you would expect to be there probably will be there. But this is going to be a case of will the dominant Seattle defense, are they going to be able to hold the pretty potent Rams offense? Obviously, we saw in that crazy Thursday night game in Seattle earlier in this season, it was a shootout, one of the best Thursday night games probably we've seen in a while, where the Seahawks came out victorious. I'll go ahead and get started here on the predictions. I'm biased. I'm in Seattle, so the fans around my shoulder here are gonna start throwing a fish at me like in Pike Place Market if I don't pick Seattle, aren't they? So I'm going Seattle. I think the team is complete defensively. Sam Darnold has answered his critics. He's still good for a turnover here or there, but as long as he keeps hold of the ball, which I think he will, JSN, Kenneth Walker, and that Seattle dominant defense, again, a raucous home crowd, same thing as Denver. The fans are going to be up for it. The Rams fans will not travel as well as Niner fans last weekend. It's going to be a heavy home field advantage there in Seattle. So that's going to carry the Seahawks to victory. Jackson, how do you think this one's going to go down?
Oh, this one's going to be close. You're talking about a heavyweight chess match in this particular matchup. This would be the third meeting this season, if you can believe it, which is crazy. Which it didn't even would have happened until it is. So so you have the number one scoring defense going up against the number one scoring offense for the Rams have the number one scoring offense, and the Rams have the scoring defense. So what I expect in this one is going to be a lot of high scoring for both teams, back and forth, and I think whoever has the ball last win probably wins the game. But this is going to be a very pivotal game. You have you pretty much have all the all the things a lot of head or storylines heading into this matchup where we're pretty much we're pretty much from what I'm looking at heading into this one where everything is pretty much where I mean something's the way that I mean the way that I'm looking so the way that I'm looking at is um is that wow, this is a very um grudge match that we have here, but this is but this but some but from what I'm looking at, something's got to give in this game because you have Matthew Stafford. If he wins, then and if he goes to Super Bowl, then he could be a potential future NFL Hall of Famer, and he could surpass and be better than Aaron Rodgers in that for being one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time in his legacy if he wins. And then you have the followed by Devontae Adams, of one of his favorite targets, and his receiver, and Kyrie Williams, and Devontae Adams and Kyrie Williams, who I had this year in my fantasy football league, and and then you have Puka Nakua, who is who is by far one of their also Matthew Stafford's one of his favorite players and favorite targets that he likes to throw to for the team. But and then Sean McVay, who's a young coach like Mike McDonald is, and I'm sure we all know about his story, having talked about him on the show before last month and a few weeks ago. Now what I would say a revenge tour for them now, but this is going to be a very tall task for the Rams, and just but they should be, but at the same time should be very excited about for heading into this environment out there up in the 12s in the Pacific Northwest, whereas on the other side of the ball, you flip it for the Seahawks, they have Sam Darnold, who has never in his career reached the NFC Championship game, and yet they're feeling a lot of pressure, but still has beliefs in his scoring defense. And so Devin Witherspoon and the Seahawks defense is elite, and they are tough and they are talented. But I think if Devin Williams and Aaron Jones and Demetrius Lawrence and Devin Witherspoon, those guys can show up and make big plays at the right moments, and I think they got a chance. But the way that I look at it, Kenneth Walker and and you mentioned about Charbonnet rolled out with injury. That's a huge. That's a I wouldn't say a huge loss, but kind of a loss for us because we really missed him, and Mike McDonald's got to plug in and get his next man up mentality in this one. So Jackson Smith, Nick Jibba, and Sam Walker, and Kenneth Walker and those guys, and Blake Corum, the Rams. I mean, a lot of a lot of great stars and playmakers.
Lots of great players here, man.
Heading in this matchup, but I
what's
have
the
to.
pick, man? What's the pick?
I'm gonna. Okay,
I gotta
so
push you.
okay. I know you got to, but wow, I could see this game going either way. But if I had to pick, it will probably be the Seahawks in a slight advantage.
Let's go, Jackson.
Like, do you agree?
Marcus Beverly's gonna be happy.
But I'm telling you, it'll be very close. The Rams will cover. But
I'm telling you this,
it will
Jackson.
be very close. What do you got for me, Blake?
I'm telling you this. I got a man sit 6 feet away from my office every day that could probably still bench press all three of us that played with Sherman and all those guys in the Seahawks. And just for that reason alone, the Seahawks are going to win the game. You're right, Jackson. Seahawks take it.
All right, Mike, you gonna make it a consensus here? Or are you gonna
Well,
zag?
yeah, I'm going to make it a consensus.
Ooh.
Although,
Okay.
Ooh.
you know, the you got to remember, the Rams picked off Darno 6 times this year.
Right.
And but the Seahawks defense is peaking. They're the number one defense in the league, and they're just getting better. Since week 13, the Rams are 5-3. Over that same period, the Seahawks are 8-0.
Wow.
Wow.
It's a good stat. It's a good stat, Mike.
Seahawks playing at home with the 12th man will win by at least a touchdown.
Ooh, Mike. What was your prediction for the game before? How much would they win by? Did you say?
Uh,
In other words, do you think the Seahawks will win by more than the Broncos will lose
The
by?
the Patriots, yeah.
yeah, I have the Pates by the Pats with by 3.
Wow. So that's an interesting. So you think the Seahawks will win by more than the Pats will? That's an
Yeah,
interesting. I like it.
yeah,
That's a hot take.
yeah,
I think both of these games will be competitive. I think, like I mentioned, obviously I'm the only one here to pick Denver, so I think the first game will be more competitive than the consensus is. But I think the Seattle team is dominant, and we'll wait till Super Bowl, obviously, to see our matchups and who we think. But it wouldn't shock me if Seattle finds himself in that big game, given how dominant their defense is. Really a historic team. But I think that will just about do us here on Good Guy Sports. Obviously, I want to say thank you for everyone listening and viewing. Mike, Jackson, and Blake for joining myself, your host, Blake Gerke, on a great episode. A great end of the college season that we covered, a really exciting conference championship Sunday. And then we're as well building up to not this upcoming week, but the week after that, a big Super Bowl out there in Santa Clara that we will obviously preview and cover here on Good Guy Sports. So I want to say thank you all for listening and viewing and hope you have a great weekend and stay warm out there.